Hello, this is Dr. Millerani, and welcome back to Macroeconomics for the remainder of the spring 2020 semester. I know this is a very stressful time for many people out there, and so I want you to know that we'll do whatever we can to accommodate any problems or questions that come up during the semester, and we'll work together to make the best of the current situation. So I'm showing you the updated Blackboard site, and what you'll see in the course introduction section now is an updated syllabus. And I'll open that up in a minute so we can take a look at it. But essentially what I want to tell you is that for the remainder of the semester rather, we'll be following the same process each week. So I'll post materials each week. I'd like you to review the posted materials, participate in the discussion board question or questions that I've posted, and then complete a graded assignment. That'll be the process throughout the rest of the semester. There'll be no more quizzes, there'll be no final. So it'll be a process of you are doing the reading, participating in the discussion board, and then completing the graded assignment. As I mentioned, I know it's a highly unusual and stressful time for everybody. And if you have any problems or challenges with this course or any assignment, please email me and I'll do the best to respond within the same day, hopefully within the same hour, but I can't promise that. And most importantly, please stay safe. Heed the advice of healthcare professionals, the CDC, and public health officials. And I am confident that we will get through this challenging time. So with that said, let's take a look at our syllabus, and then we will talk about what's in the week of March 23rd folder. Okay, so as I mentioned, what we have now is a revised syllabus. So let me share that with you now. Okay, so you'll see that at the top is a revised course syllabus for online course week starting March 23rd. So I'm going to point out a couple of things that have changed. First, grading process. So we've completed 3 quizzes. That will account for 40% of your grade. And the remaining 60% will be done using the discussion board and graded assignments. And so some have asked if I will drop the lowest quiz score, and the answer to that is yes. So hopefully you all have a very high score at this point. But the thing about the discussion board and the graded assignments is that if you do the work every week, then you should get full credit. So with the discussion board, I'll be asking a question or two each week. And then with the graded assignments, you can take them as many times as you want and your highest score will be counted. So everybody, if they do the work every week, should get a very good grade in the course. Okay, so I want to try to remove any stresses that we have going forward. So if you look at the schedule for the course, you'll see that I've marked them in week of March 23rd, week of March 30th. That will tell you what we're going to cover each week. And again, your main job each week is to review the posted materials, participate in the discussion board questions, and complete the graded assignment. And if you do that, then hopefully you'll get some helpful learning from the course, and you should get a very good grade in the course as well. So what I've opened now is the week of March 23rd folder. And what you'll see in the week of March 23rd folder is the material we're going to cover. So we're going to cover 2 things this week. One is the Chapter 11 income multiplier, and the other is investment spending. So part of what you'll do this week is to review the posted slides, I've included some helpful videos here that I think will help explain the multiplier. And also you'll be asked to do a graded assignment from the Chapter 11 readings. So that will be the first part of what you're going to do. And as I mentioned, graded assignments can be taken multiple times, and your highest score will be the one that gets recorded. The other thing I want you to do is participate in the discussion board. So I'm going to try to intertwine the coronavirus and its economic impact throughout the remainder of the semester. So we'll start this week. I'm going to ask you to listen to a 16-minute podcast that the Wall Street Journal did that talks about the coronavirus and the potential impact to the United States economy. And then there's 3 questions that I've posted here. You can pick one or all of them to kind of respond to, but I'd like you to answer at least one by Thursday at 11 p.m. and then respond to one or more of your colleagues by Sunday at 11 p.m. Okay, so the thing about writing discussion board answers is that it should be thoughtful. It should be a couple of paragraphs at a minimum, and it certainly could be longer. And when you respond to somebody, it's not simply saying, "Hey, that was a great post." It's saying, "I liked your post," or "I disagree with you," or whatever the case may be, and then give the person some feedback, just like you're in a conversation with somebody. Right? So it's not just a thumbs up or a thumbs down. It's a thoughtful response that helps the person to either affirm what they've said or to collect some information that would be helpful to them to think about things a little bit differently. Okay, now I'm going to spend a few minutes going through the slides that I've posted, just like I would in class. So one of the main departures from our classroom setting is that I won't be using Kahoot unless I can figure out a way to do it remotely. So essentially what I'll do is we'll probably skip that part of it for now, but I will go through the slides just like I would in class, and then if you have any questions, then you should email them to me, and I'll be happy to do the best I can to respond very quickly to any questions you might have. So Chapter 11 deals with the multiplier. So I know we've talked about the multiplier before the spring break, and the multiplier basically talks about the fact that when we inject something into the economy, we inject a financial stimulus into the economy, then we expect it to have a bigger impact than the initial injection. So as you may know from the news, the U.S. government is talking about injecting $1 to $2 billion, $1 to $2 trillion into the U.S. economy to try to stave off a major recession. And we expect that that's going to have a much bigger impact than just the initial injection. And the way that works is through something called the multiplier effect. So when we talked about the multiplier, we'll take a look at what that means. The other thing Chapter 11 talks about is around investment spending and what determines the level of investment spending by firms. And so when we talk about investment spending here, we're talking about the investment that companies make in property, plant, and equipment. And there's a new wrinkle to this, which will be around inventories. And we'll look at how inventories actually play a role in investment spending. So unfortunately, right now, I think a lot of companies are probably building up inventory because I think people have pretty much staying home, being quarantined, and so there's probably lots of goods that are being stockpiled right now in anticipation, we hope, of future purchases. So basically, when we talk about the multiplier, it's this chain reaction. Somebody gets paid, they go and spend money for groceries, that goes to the bank then loans out to the museum, and the museum then employs people who go out and spend money at theaters and shows and so forth and so on. And so what we basically see is a chain reaction. And as I've mentioned throughout the semester, if we think about the economy as a bubble or balloon, it's either getting bigger or smaller. And we know right now that because of the quarantine, that many millions of Americans are under, that the balloon is almost certainly getting smaller, right? Because people are withdrawing from this process, and rather than being out there going to the restaurants and theaters and vacations, we're staying at home. So we hope that's a temporary thing. If it's a temporary thing, then that circle should start to come back quickly and robustly. If it ends up being a much longer term thing, then it may take longer, but I'm confident that it will come back. It's just a question of when, not if. So to give an example, if, for example, construction spending by firms or by the US government or by any entity increases by 100 billion, how does this affect the economy? So what we know is that it affects it by a much larger percentage than just much larger amount than just the initial injection. So a new house project injects X. They benefit directly by building supply, the supply industry, architects. They create wages for people who work on it, and they go out and spend money and so forth. And so what we look at is the circle of getting bigger, right? The balloon getting bigger, the circle getting bigger. And, one of the things that people talk about is buying locally, because when you buy locally, that tends to keep the increase, the multiplier within your local community and makes your local community bigger. But, the reality is that most of us don't spend a lot of time thinking about that as a general rule. So when we talk about the multiplier, we're going to talk about the MPC, which is the marginal propensity to consume. And what we know is that if I look at the marginal propensity to consume, this is if we give somebody an extra amount of money, how much of that will they consume versus save? So if I give somebody an extra $1,000, as this is being talked about in the current stimulus package, how much of it will you save? Well, some people will spend all of it. So their marginal propensity to consume will be 100%. Others will save all of it. So their marginal propensity to consume will be 0. And then many people will do something in between. But what economists are interested in is on average what happens. So let's say that on average, the average American consumer spends 80% of it, then the marginal propensity to consume would be 80%. And as a result, the average marginal propensity to save would be 20%, because those two numbers, marginal propensity to consume and marginal propensity to save, always have to equal 1 or 100. Okay, so one of the things that we hope is that the money that goes to people is money that people are going to spend and not save, because we want the economy to be active. We want that chain reaction to be increasing and growing, and not having people hold on to or hoard their money. So, example, if we get an additional X amount of dollars, if I consume 90, then by definition I have to save 10. Right. So in that case, my marginal propensity to consume would be 90, and my marginal propensity to save would be 10. Right. And if the next person is 80 and 20, then their MPC is 80 and their MPS is 20. Okay. So when we look at this, what we know is that the two numbers, MPC plus MPS, always equals 1 or 100. And the goal, particularly in economic times when economic activity is low, is that we want people to spend money so that we can get the system working, the system running. So that's one of the tricky things. So government spends the money. Do people actually spend it, or do they hold on to it? One of the criticisms of the massive tax cuts we gave to corporations back in 2017 was that they didn't actually invest the money. They gave shareholders large dividends, and they gave corporate executives big pay raises. They bought back stock, but it didn't go to the people who were more likely to spend the money, their workers and so forth. So we're hoping this time it's different. It's really critical that we get this right, because we want people to feel confident, particularly people who are going to be hurt by this economic downturn that we are about to enter into. So basically, what happens is that we can use the marginal propensity to consume and save to figure out how much the economy, in theory, should should grow by. Okay, so what happens is there's a very simple formula. If I look at the injection and I multiply it by the marginal propensity, 1 minus the marginal propensity to consume, or 1 over the marginal propensity to save, then that will tell me the amount of the increase in the economy. So for example, if my marginal propensity to consume is 90%, then my marginal propensity to save is 10%. If I inject 100, then we should see a growth of 10,000 of 1,000, sorry. So, or 10 times that amount, right? So that's essentially what the marginal propensity to consume and save talks about. So this chart basically summarizes at different levels, right? So again, keep in mind that every consumer has a different level, but what major policymakers are trying to figure out is, on average, what are people going to do? And so we know that if you need money for basic necessities, that you'll probably spend most of it. We know that if you're economically comfortable during difficult times, you'll probably save most of it. So hopefully the stimulus package that is going to be implemented will be really targeted towards people who really need the money. So if the marginal propensity to save is 10%, or the consumption is 90%, then that stimulus could multiply by 10. If on the other hand, it's only 50%, then it only multiply by 2. So very important that that we could target this to the right individuals who need it the most. So here's some comparisons that were done by the Congressional Budget Office on different stimulus and packages, and this confirms the idea that when you give money or injections to people that are at the lower end of the income spectrum, they're more likely to spend it and to stimulate the economy. And when you give things to corporations and people with a lot of money, then the impact isn't nearly as strong. So tax cuts to individuals, 1.1, business tax incentives, 0.2, right? So you can see that there's a major difference here. So one of the things that's widely known is that corporate profits in the United States have been very strong. And they have actually been at record levels for the last 6 or 7 years, and large corporations have lots and lots of money. So what we're hoping is that they'll use that money, particularly now, to help stimulate the economy. And the one way they can do that is through investment spending. So over time, what we expect is that there'll be a close correlation in terms of investment spending and profits. And that has not been the case in the last couple of years, but hopefully big corporations will step up and start to invest. One of the difficulties we run into, though, is that corporations like predictability. They like some level of certainty. And these times really are the opposite of that, right? This is a period of a high degree of uncertainty. So it's going to take some courage. It's going to take some commitment to our economy on the part of big corporations to use the hordes of cash that they have to help stimulate the economy. So here's the cash stash, as it's sometimes called. It's, hundreds of millions of dollars. I'm sorry, hundreds of billions of dollars. So when we look at what drives investment spending, there's 3 main things that drive it. One is the interest rate. So we see that investment spending is inversely correlated to the interest rate. So the higher the interest rate, the less investment spending. The lower the interest rate, the more investment spending. So one of the things that the Federal Reserve Bank did in the last couple of weeks was to lower the interest rate they control to 0. Okay, that's as low as they can make it. Well, they could go to negative, but 0 interest rate. And we should see banks also lower their interest rates to firms and to individuals. So that should help incent investment spending. The other thing is what do companies expect about the economy? So if they expect the economy to be growing, they're more willing to invest. So that's a big question mark right now. And the other is the current level of productive capacity. So one of the things that we might be in good shape on right now is the fact that before this shock hit the system, before the coronavirus shock hit the system, many economists felt that we were approaching full productive capacity, full employment. And if that's the case, then hopefully the lower interest rates coupled with hopefully a stimulus that will increase demand will encourage companies with lots of this cash to invest their money. Time will tell. So one of the other things that is talked about in Chapter 11 is something called the paradox of thrift. This is something that we hope doesn't happen with the coronavirus shock. So the paradox of thrift was coined by John Maynard Keynes during the Great Depression. And what he realized is that just simply giving people money doesn't necessarily work, because during economic downturns, during periods of uncertainty, on average, people are going to spend less and save more. And so generally speaking, savings is something that we desire because it opens up the door for investment spending. But during economic downturns, what we really want is for people and firms to spend so that we can get that circle, that interconnected circle, that chain reaction, that balloon moving faster, growing more vigorously. So we're hoping that this time that people spend the money that they get with the stimulus package and elsewhere. So, all right, so that's the recording for the week of March 23rd. If you have any questions, concerns, please reach out to me. And I wish that you and all of your family members stay safe. And if there's anything I can do for you, don't hesitate to reach out to me.